The beauty industry is a massive engine of the American small business economy. In 2021, employer beauty salons generated nearly $22.8 billion in revenue, and today there are well over 313,000 workers categorized as barbers, hairdressers, and cosmetologists. The workforce composition here is unique. According to census data, in specific beauty disciplines like manicuring, self-employed workers actually outnumber those working for employer firms. This is a highly localized, deeply physical trade. Yet in law and in daily administration, beauty licensing is governed primarily as a higher education issue. We have taken a hands-on, small business trade and forced it to operate under the regulatory framework of a college degree. This happens because of a federal overlay. To access student financial aid, proprietary vocational schools often choose to participate in programs administered by the U.S. Department of Education. Once they opt in, they are legally classified as Title IV institutions. That classification subjects beauty programs to institutional rules built for universities. They face mandatory accreditation, annual financial and compliance audits, cohort default accountability, and strict 90/10 revenue restrictions. The administrative friction this creates is staggering. The Department of Education recently estimated an annual burden of 6.9 million hours just for a single FEE-GE reporting collection. Under the proposed 2026 earnings test framework, cosmetology-related programs are projected to be among the highest failing fields. This high failure rate does not mean learning to cut hair or apply chemicals lacks value. It proves that forcing a localized trade with modest entry wages to carry the overhead, tuition debt, and reporting structures of a higher education system guarantees systemic failure. This raises a structural question. Does the federal education system actually determine who is competent to safely execute these services? The short answer is no. Title IV compliance requirements are strict finance and institution rules. They dictate how money is managed and tracked. They are not cosmetology practice rules. The authority to practice actually lives entirely at the state level. In the states that regulate these trades, beauty practice is treated as an occupational license overseen by professional regulation and licensing agencies, completely separate from higher education boards. A more coherent approach separates the education finance system from the authority to practice. We can treat the mandatory pre-licensure training as what it actually is: a short, focused public health safety certificate. Once the safety baseline is established, occupational mastery moves into a paid, supervised work-based learning system aligned with the U.S. Department of Labor. This structural shift is not deregulation. It maintains licensure, sanitation enforcement, and competency examinations. It simply decouples education finance from practice authority. We change what is required up front, what is learned on the job, and which public systems bear the administrative load. The state's legal justification for regulating beauty practice is rooted firmly in public health. Washington state law explicitly dictates that these professions involve tools and chemicals that may be dangerous if improperly applied, making regulation a matter of public health, safety, and welfare. Look at the state admissions of other licensing boards. Kentucky focuses on bacteriological sanitation. Virginia mandates EPA-registered hospital-grade disinfectants and immediate blood spill response protocols. The hazard profile of the industry validates this narrow focus. Peer-reviewed literature documents severe risks, including rapidly growing mycobacterial infections from pedicure bowls and the transmission of hepatitis B and C in nail salons and barbershops. Nail salon workers also face documented, recurrent exposures to hazardous cosmetic ingredients and workplace chemicals that demand strict handling protocols. Preventing these specific hazards requires targeted health and safety interventions. It does not require a sprawling collegiate curriculum. The testing infrastructure already reflects this division. States use third-party administrators, like PSI Services, whose practical scoring rubrics are designed to fail candidates specifically for unsafe sanitation behaviors. The state's core police power interest is protecting consumers and workers from physical harm. Therefore, the mandatory tuition-based upfront training should be narrowed exclusively to this safety and sanitation core. We already have a working model for separating a critical safety threshold from broader career progression, the Emergency Medical Technician Certification. The National EMS Education Standards define the minimum public safety function as verifiable competence. This training requires only 150 to 190 clock hours. By comparison, Kentucky requires 1,500 hours of cosmetology school before a student is even eligible for the exam. That time commitment collides directly with labor market realities. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports a median hourly wage of $16.95 for cosmetologists. An entry-level wage of $16.95 simply cannot absorb the massive tuition debt and long periods of foregone earnings required by a 1,500-hour upfront model. Other skilled, safety-critical occupations navigate this gracefully. In trades like HVAC and construction, long skill formation happens almost exclusively through wage-paid apprenticeships rather than front-loaded tuition. Deep occupational mastery takes time, but demanding years of unpaid front-end schooling is an anomaly. The most efficient way to build a highly skilled workforce is to let them earn while they learn. We can fix this by implementing a two-stage licensing architecture that splits public health from occupational mastery. Stage 1 begins with a state-approved safety curriculum. After mastering sanitation and chemical safety, the applicant passes an exam to earn a limited safety permit. Armed with that permit, the worker is hired into a licensed salon. Here, skill formation moves into paid, on-the-job learning under a registered apprenticeship. This is already happening. Washington State provides a live proof of concept, operating salon apprenticeship standards that mandate strict one-to-one apprentice-to-journey mentorship ratios. Washington also enforces a built-in wage progression, ensuring apprentices receive mandatory step-up grades at 75, 80, and 90% of the journey-level wage as they gain competence. Virginia offers the blueprint for financing this model. By recognizing beauty as a registered apprenticeship through the designated state agency, workers can use workforce tools like WIOA to fund their related technical instruction, avoiding higher ed debt entirely. This flowchart proves the policy is highly practical. Test the safety minimum early, then move the actual trade formation directly onto the salon floor. To execute this transition, we must apply a core principle of governance: functional alignment. Agencies must stick to regulating what they were built to regulate. State health departments already evaluate hazardous chemicals and salon worker safety. Under this model, they define the initial safety curriculum and sanitation protocols. State cosmetology boards retain ultimate authority over the profession, setting final licensure standards and administering exams. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor and Workforce boards manage the economic mechanics, overseeing registered apprenticeship standards, wage progressions, and supportive services. By aligning agency function with actual expertise, we eliminate regulatory redundancy and clear a streamlined, logical path to market. The final institutional question is what this means for legacy beauty schools. The most durable political strategy is pluralism, not monopoly. The objective is not to abolish schools, but to end their legal monopoly over the mandatory pathway to entry. Legacy schools can adapt. They can pivot to become fast-track safety certificate providers, related instruction partners for the apprenticeship phase, or advanced specialty training centers. At the same time, shifting to a salon-based model requires rigorous worker safeguards. States must enforce documented work processes, precise supervision ratios, and periodic audits to ensure apprentices are receiving real training, not just supplying cheap labor. Reframing beauty licensing as a focused public health permit paired with a wage-paid apprenticeship solves the structural mismatch. It rescues a vital small business sector from an oversized higher ed compliance trap and replaces crushing upfront debt with a genuine functional trade pathway.